Hello and welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Anniken and today I've got a tutorial for you. I post every Friday and there's a mixture of tutorials, yarn and product reviews and my confessions of a yarn addict podcast episode. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed yet, please consider subscribing. And if you think you've got knitting friends who might like this video, please share this video with them. If you're subscribing, please consider tapping the bell so that you get notifications when I upload new videos, which is usually on a Friday morning. Today I've got a tutorial on how to unpick stitches. So I knitted a sock. I wasn't happy with the heel. I did a short row heel, which looks awful. So I've unpicked it. And today I'm going to show you how I unpicked that heel. You might think, well, I would have realized the heel looked awful and picked it before I carried on, which I did actually consider, but I thought it looked better than it did. Then when I finished the sock, I realized how awful it looks. So you might think, you know, when will I need this tutorial? Well, this tutorial can be useful for other things as well. For example, if your heel on your sock is worn out, you can actually take it off and knit a new heel. But also you might want to unpick other things. So you might have a sleeve that's too long or too short, probably mainly too long, and you need to shorten it. Body of a sweater might be too long. There might be other things that you want to unpick. So this could be applied to other situations as well. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you at the end where I'll show you what my new heel looks like. I finished this sock a couple of days ago and I'm not very happy with the heel. So normally I do an afterthought heel, especially when I'm knitting with striping yarn. I do an afterthought heel, which means that when I get to where the heel is supposed to be, I just knit half the stitches on a piece of waste yarn. Then when I finish the sock, I undo that waste yarn and put the heel in. I've got a couple of videos on my website where I show how I knit in and unpick the waste yarn. The actual heel itself I include in my Aventuras pattern and my Adventure Shorties pattern, and it's also in my Aventuras online sock course, which will soon be renamed Successful Socks online course. I'll put all those links below if you're interested. But recently I've been experimenting with something called a Fish Lips Kiss heel, and which has short rows, which I believe are called shadow wraps. I hadn't come across these short rows before, but lots of people like the Fish Lips Kiss heel, so I thought I would try it. Unfortunately, I'm still struggling a bit with it. I wasn't 100% happy with another pair of socks where I used it, and I tried it on these socks, and this is DK yarn, so this yarn is a lot thicker and the stitches are a lot bigger. So if you make any mistakes or anything that you're not 100% happy with, it tends to show much more. So somebody suggested I try German short rows, which is what I normally do. So I tried German short rows on this sock. So I basically used the Fish Lips Kiss method, but I used German short rows instead of the short rows suggested in the Fish Lips Kiss pattern. If you haven't heard of Fish Lips Kiss heels before, it's a pattern that's just for the heel that you can use with any type of socks apparently, and the pattern is available on Ravelry. I don't know whether it's available off Ravelry, but if you are able to use Ravelry, then go to ravelry.com and just search Fish Lips Kiss heel. It's quite a popular pattern. It's the first time I've tried it. Anyway, I substituted short rows for German short rows, which I usually really like and usually look very good, but especially on this side, can you see how holey it looks? I'm just not happy with it. Now I could stitch that up on the back or try and tighten it up somehow and make it look a bit better. But actually this type of heel is a little bit too shallow for my foot. I've got quite a high instep. My foot's quite deep, so I find that this doesn't really suit my feet that much, which is why I don't normally use German short rows or any type of short rows. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this off. So the short rows is this kind of wedge here. I'm going to take that off and then do my normal afterthought heel. Now there's a couple of ways you could do this. Because these socks were knitted in that direction, then I knitted the heel back and forth, and then I knitted in that direction. If I cut it here, it's going to be difficult to unravel it. This bit should unravel okay, but that bit maybe not so easy. So what I think I'm going to do, there's a couple of different ways you could do this. You could actually get your knitting needle and try and insert it before you unravel, or you could unravel it and then insert a knitting needle. I'm actually going to try and see if I can insert this before I unravel it, I think, because I think that's the easiest thing. So that, I put that marker in when I started knitting the leg, because I did a few rounds where the back was plain and the front had the rib continuing from the foot. And I just did a few rounds plain, which is what it suggests in the Fish Lips Kiss heel, that you do a few rounds plain on the back of the sock before you start a pattern. So that's what that marker is for. So that's where I want to go in the row before that, really. No, I want to go in on that row. So I'm going to put my needle in. Actually, let's do it this way. So I want to start on that one. So I want to put my needle in there. And then I want to go in that direction and that direction. So let's go in this direction first. Now, I sometimes find it difficult to make sure I stick to a straight row when I pick up like this. So each stitch is a V shape, if you're looking at it the right way. And if you're looking at it upside down, the loop between your stitches also form a V shape. So I know that I knitted this in that direction. So if I go for the V shape this way, I should be picking up the correct stitches. And each stitch has two legs. So I'm going to pick up all the right hand legs. So you can see if I pick those two, I don't know how easy it is to see because there isn't a lot of contrast with the pink needles I'm using. But if I pick up those two strands, let me do it with one a bit higher up here. I know this is in the wrong place, but can you see I've got two strands on there? So that's the whole stitch, and I want to pick up, so you've got a right leg and a left leg, and I want to pick up all the right leg ones. You can do all the left leg ones, it doesn't really matter, but the idea is that you choose one leg, so you either do all the right leg or all the left leg. Choose one and stick with it. So I'm going to just start in the middle there, and then I'm going to try and see if I can stick to a right line. So pick up the first leg, so I'm ignoring the left leg, pick up the right leg of the next stitch, pick up the right leg of the next stitch, and I'm just going to carry on like that across the row, like that. Okay, there, that's, and then I'm going to do the same thing in the other direction. So I'm going to pull my needle all the way through. I'm using a circular needle. These were the needles I actually knitted this with. You can use double point needles if you prefer. So I now want to go that way, but because I find it difficult to use my left hand to go that way, I'm actually going to flip it over because it's easier. So I've got to try and make sure I stick to the same row. That may be a row down, I'm not sure. So I'm going to try it. So now I'll be picking up the left leg because I flipped it over. I may have gone one row down, a row earlier on this one, I'm not sure, but that's fine. As long as you, it doesn't matter if you don't pick up all the rows, all the stitches on the same row. If you get it wrong slightly, it doesn't really matter. You can catch those stitches. Okay, so now I'm going to cut. Before I cut, I'm just going to get one of those out, and I'm also going to get one of these out. Oops, so if I accidentally have missed the stitch or dropped the stitch, I can quickly slip that through it and it won't unravel. So now I'm going to take that marker out, and then I'm going to cut it on a stitch in the middle. You don't really want to cut at the side because you want to make sure you have a tail. So the stitch that I'm going to unravel, I'm not going to use that yarn again, but the yarn that carries on up this way, I want to make sure I have a bit of a tail to weave in. So I'm actually going to cut it in the middle. I'm wondering whether I've missed the stitch right there in the middle. Now make sure you don't cut your knitting needle cable. So I'm just going to cut one stitch here, And then I think I've actually missed one stitch right in the middle. Can you see there's a bit of a bigger gap there? So I need to just have a bit of a look here because I think I've missed the stitch. Yes, I have. And because I pulled it, it's kind of come apart a bit. So we'll put that one on there. And that will just hold that. Yeah, there we go. I had to pull the... I've also... Okay, so this wasn't very good. I've actually cut the wrong stitch. I've cut the stitch on the row I picked up. I should have cut the stitch on the row below the one I picked up. So let's start this again. So I'm going to take that out and start again actually, because so that I cut the wrong stitch. So I cut the stitch that was on the needle. I should have cut the one on this side of the needle below the needle, because what I've actually done is the row that I will unravel is the row that was on my needle. So that was a little bit of a foolish mistake from me, but there we go. Right, so I'm just going to, that stitch had unraveled one row, so I've just picked that up. So then I'm going to go into the next stitch. Now I want to focus on the stitches on this side, because they are the stitches that I don't want to unravel. This one's on this side. The heel part of it is fine because I'm going to unravel them anyway. So I'm just going to go through here and use this to unpick. As I'm picking this row, I will end up with live stitches, and then I'm just going to slip those onto my needle. So it goes through, the working yarn goes through each stitch twice. So I don't know how easy it is to see this. So it's going through this stitch, the last stitch I picked up again, and then it's going to go into the next stitch. So if you're not sure, just pull on this and see where it goes. I can see that it goes through this stitch here. The main thing is, if you suddenly like pull on the fabric like that, it'll make all the stitches that you've unpicked just pop and unravel. So as long as you do this slowly and carefully and don't pull on the fabric, then you should be fine. You should have long enough to pick up the stitch. And if the occasional stitch unravels one row or two rows, then either just get it on the needle as quickly as possible, or put one of these markers in so you can keep it secure until you can fix it. If you don't know how to pick up a dropped stitch and pick it up 1 or 2 rows, then that is something that you really should learn. It should really be, picking up drop stitches should be one of the first things you learn, I think, when you learn to knit. After you've learned to knit in the purl stitch and cast on and cast off, the next thing really ought to be picking up dropped stitches, because we all drop stitches. Right, hang on, what have I done here? There we go. Getting ahead of myself a bit here. Right, so where is the working yarn? There. So it's easier if the yarn you're unpicking and the yarn you're picking up, so the strand you're undoing and the stitches you're picking up are different colours, but they're not here. So I'm just pulling on this. If I'm not sure what I'm pulling, I'm just being careful. Because if you try and pull on something and it doesn't, you know, nothing happens like that, then you know you're pulling on the wrong thing. So just be careful. There we go. And then it goes, hang on. Okay, so that was the stitch I picked up in the gap. So I'm all the way across now. That next stitch here, that pink one here, is actually from the bottom part, which I'm not going to pick up. Actually, yes, I will pick up. I'll carry on just going around. No, I won't. I don't need to pick that up. Right, so I'm actually going to unravel those, so I don't need to pick those up. So I'm going to leave that, and I'm going to pull those out of the stitches on that side, flip my sock over, and then do the other half of this row. Just look really closely and make sure you don't miss a stitch. It's very, very easy to accidentally miss a stitch into that one, into that one. No, wrong one. Okay, so I tried to pull on the work, what I thought was the working yarn, and it wouldn't go. So I was basically pulling on the wrong stitch or the wrong thread. Also gotta be a bit careful that you don't accidentally put your needle through these stitches at the back here as well. The way I was holding it made that a bit more easy mistake to make. Right, so out of there, there we go. So it goes through one of these stitches, then it goes through the other stitch at the bottom here. So what we're actually doing is we're pulling out the strand that goes between these stitches and those stitches. We're pulling out one row of stitches. And I'm not worried about these stitches here because they're going to become, we're going to unravel those anyway. So there's nothing to worry about really. Okay. There we go. Into that stitch, and don't worry too much about whether the stitches you're picking up are going to be twisted or not on your needle. That doesn't really matter. If they're twisted, you can untwist them or just knit them through the back loop. Main thing is that you pick them all up. There we go. So it goes through each stitch twice, so you've got 2 chances. So it comes through this stitch here now. I pull it out, and then it goes into the, so it went through this next stitch, this stitch here. I've pulled it out, the first strand out, the first time we went through that stitch, I pull that out, and then I put it on the needle, and then if I pull on this again, the second strand has gone through. So it goes through each stitch twice, so you got kind of 2 attempts to catch it. I try and put it on my knitting needle before I pull the working yarn out, just because I think that's easier. Sometimes I put it on before I pull the first strand out. Sometimes I pull the first strand out, and then I put it on like I'm doing with this one, which is a little bit more difficult actually. I wish it was this bright pink I was picking up, because that would have been easier because it's a brighter colour, but at least it wasn't the darkest purple I'm picking up. There we go. I'm not sure that's the right stitch, but we'll find out. Oops. Sometimes the yarn may split a little bit as you're doing this. Sometimes you can, if you're certain that you're not going to need the yarn, you can cut it. But what you have to remember is that you want to tail each end to make sure you unravel. So if I was just going to, if I don't want to cut this, it's a little bit tangled there, but I'm not going to cut it. But that means that it's a little bit more difficult to pull through the stitches because of the fact that it's a bit untangled, a bit tangled. This yarn, which I haven't knitted with before, is a Norwegian yarn called Viking Aurora, I think. It's a little bit splitty, a little bit loosely spun. So it goes through this stitch here, and then it goes through here, but I don't think that's a stitch. I think that's just, yeah, I don't know, is that a stitch? No, that's not a stitch. So at the edge, each end, I picked up a stitch in the gap just to stop from getting holes. Okay, so that strand, I want to make sure I leave that because it's not that long and I need to weave that in at the end. And then, so those are the stitches. I'm just going to check that I got the right number of stitches. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 16, 18, 20, 22... 24, 25. Right, let me just check how many stitches I actually need. So I had 56 stitches in total, which means that I'll have 28. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 22, 24, 25. Okay, so I'm missing some stitches here. That stitch here, I can tell I've actually caught the stitch, and the stitch is unraveled, but I caught the loop, the row that it was unraveled to, so that stitch should go over that loop there, but I'll fix that later. Okay, so let's see, maybe there's another stitch missing here. So I will actually only get 27 stitches because I had 28 here, and what I've got on my needles now are the loops in between the stitches that were here. So instead of 28, I will get 27. There may be another stitch here that I need to pick up. I'm not sure. Okay. So let's start unraveling this bit and see what happens. So I'm not gonna wind this up. If I was going to use this yarn again, which I'm not going to, you could wind it up over your fingers so you don't end up with a big mess, but I'm not going to do that because I have enough yarn left from the first half. I actually wound the ball into 2 halves before I started, and I have enough to actually, okay. So I've undone the second half of the short rows, so that's the first half of the short rows. And then it creates a wedge, and then I've just finished unwinding the second half. And then there's something going on over here. So I'm going to just cut this yarn and see, because it's catching on something here. So I'm not sure what's going on here. So let's have a look. Okay, so it's just got to go through here, and what I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to pick up some of these stitches as I'm unraveling this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and insert this needle as I'm unraveling this. This is the short rows. So instead of unraveling it row by row and then ending up with lots of live stitches, I'm going to just do this from this end. Actually, I think that's a short row as well. There we go. Yeah. Okay. So basically I'm coming down to the first short row I did. And then, so you can just pull on this pink yarn and do it row by row and then pick up all the live stitches, but I'm going to try and pick these up as I go. Actually, no, that's a little bit, I don't know, don't think I'll do that. I think I'll just try and unravel them all because it is a little bit time consuming. So let's just see what's going on over here. So I will have on this wedge, I'll have fewer stitches, fewer rows at the sides and more rows in the middle. Okay. Let's see what's happening here. Okay, I'm not sure whether that's a stitch or whether that's this bit here. I'm not sure what that is. Okay, we'll leave that for a minute. Okay, I'm just going to put that stitch on the side there on the needle. So what I'm going to do, I think, is unravel this pink stuff. But what I got is I got my stitches ready on each side to slip onto my needle when I get down to this first row. So I'm not sure which direction I'll be coming to this from. This side, I think. Okay, no, not quite. Okay, so that's the final row. So now I'm unraveling the final row. I'm going to, as I'm unraveling it, slip those stitches back onto my knitting needle. The main thing now is to, this fabric is not pull on it, because if you pull on it, your stitches are more likely to unravel further down and create a ladder. If I just hold it kind of relaxed and slip the stitches onto my knitting needle, and I'm just pulling on the working yarn gently, then I'm more likely to catch all those stitches on my knitting needle. Oops. Okay, so that's what just happened here. So that stitch unraveled one row. So can you see I've got a strand here? So I'm not going to pick that up now. I'm just going to put that stitch on my needle, and then I'm just going to remember, first round I do, when I do the afterthought heel on this, I will just be sure that all my stitches are on the correct row. So if they've unraveled one row like that stitch did, I will fix it on the first round. Same thing happened here. It unraveled one row. There we go. Okay, and then we got that stitch. Okay, I think that's it. Hold on. Is that it? Let's see how many stitches we got. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 18, 20, 22, 24, 26, 28. Brilliant. I got 28 there, so I should have 27 here. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 24, 26. I only got 26 there. So I must be missing one over here somewhere. So just going to check that I haven't accidentally dropped one. If I've dropped one here, I should be able to see it, especially when I kind of pull this out a bit like this. Because if I drop one, it'll unravel, run down very, very quickly. So I think it must be this stitch here, which I wasn't quite sure about, but I'm not sure. I'm not sure why that's attached to that. I'm going to leave it like that. Actually, I've picked up that stitch there because it does look like a stitch, but for some reason it has this purple yarn going through it. I'm not quite sure why, but we will leave that like that. So what I'm going to do now is, let me just show you how to fix this stitch here that I said had run down one stitch. So if you look on the back here, I can see there's a loop of yarn. That means that I haven't, that stitch there hasn't unraveled one row. And that's the only loop of yarn I can see, so that's good. And because it's quite close to the end, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pick the stitches. Because it's so close to the end, I'm just going to pick them to there, and then I can just knit them. If it was further back, I would slip them and then fix it, pick it up, but because it was only a few stitches, I haven't picked it. Then I'm just going to knit my way back again. There we go. So now I'm at the same point that I would be if I'd put in a piece of waste yarn, and then I was going to knit afterthought heel. This is where I am now. So now I'm going to knit my afterthought heel, and then I will show you what that looks like when it's finished. But this is how easy it is if you have done either an afterthought heel or a short row heel. That's not an afterthought heel. So an afterthought heel is a heel that you knit on at the end like this. A basic short row heel you knit as you're going along. So you knit up to here, then you do short rows, and then you carry on in the round. So if you find that you don't like the short row, or if that bit wears out, that's how easy it is to unpick it. First time you do it, it might seem a bit scary, but once you've done it a few times, you get used to it. So I'm going to go and knit this heel now, and then I'll come back and show you what it looks like when I finish it. So I have knitted the new heel. I prefer to do afterthought heel. It's what I normally do, so especially when I'm using self-striping yarn like this. The reason I like that is because it doesn't interrupt the stripe pattern. Does a little bit here. That's because I knitted in the short row heel to start with. So when I did a short row heel, I was knitting back and forth on this section, and that used up some of those two colors. So it does affect the stripe pattern on this sock, but if I'd done the afterthought heel to start with, all these stripes would have been even. Now on the second sock, these stripes will all be even because I will be going straight for the afterthought heel. Means the socks won't match, but I don't really care about matching socks anyway, so that's fine. I've designed and knitted these to wear in my Pilates class, and I basically followed the my Aventuras pattern, except this yarn is thicker, so I cast on fewer stitches. So I started from the toe up, and I basically increased until it was big enough to fit around my foot. And I decided on that by sort of trial and error. I think I increased to 56 stitches. Normally I do 64 stitches when I'm knitting with 4-ply sock yarn. So this is DK sock yarn, and I use 3.5mm needles. So this is my new heel. So I unraveled to here, and then I, where that purple plum line is there, that's where I unraveled to, and then I re-knitted this section. So knitted in the round, and then I decreased at the end. So that's my standard afterthought heel, which I cover in my Aventuras sock pattern, my Adventure Shorties sock pattern, and my Aventuras online sock course. So Aventuras online sock course will be renamed to Successful Socks later this year, and there will be more lessons added to it as well. So I'll put all the links to that below. But this is what my new heel looks like. So it looks on that side. It was a little bit gappy at the sides here, but I think that's because of the way I'd done the short row. I think I made a mistake when I did the short rows, and I started on the wrong stitch or something, and I probably should have unpicked an extra round, but I didn't. So it looked a little bit funny here, so I just had to kind of fudge it a bit. So it doesn't look perfect, but I'm quite happy with it. So I've knitted these to wear in my Pilates class, and I think they look fine. What I will try and do is see if I can get a picture or compare the two with this one with the second sock, which I'm going straight for the afterthought heel. Anyway, I hope you liked today's tutorial. I hope it was helpful for you. If you have any questions, please ask below this video. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. And if you haven't subscribed yet, please consider subscribing, and please click the notification bell so you're notified every time I upload a video, which is usually once a week. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you next time.